So I'm very mixed with this week's episode of SAO2. There was some good parts to it, and then there was some parts where I felt like SAO2 was kind of relapsing into some certain bad habits that SAO1 had. For starters, this episode, I definitely felt like the pacing on a certain level was going back to some of the stuff that we would get in SAO1. I mean, from the moment he went into the game, he quickly already met up with Sinon. I mean, I'm sure this game is humongous. So for him to run into Sinon already, it felt like they just kind of breezed to that point very quickly. But then there were certain aspects as well where I felt like it was just kind of going super quick. So the pacing in this episode definitely was looking like a lot of that SAO1 stuff, and if you know from SAO1, the pacing was way too fast. So in that regard, I was just looking at it like, please don't tell me we're going back into that SAO1 pacing where Kirito becomes a master of the game in no time at all. And then not to mention something that I kind of already knew was going to be regarding Kirito being a female in the game. He has this weird, rare type of female body coming into this. First of all, no explanation on it thus far. It's just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. I'd imagine it has to do with something of him like transferring from Alfheim. Maybe, I don't know, Leafa played a trick on him, or somebody played a trick on him to fuck him over so that he don't bag no bitches. Maybe this is his sister, or this was Asuna like trying to make sure that him going to another game, he don't meet up with no chicks and get no booty. And for the most part, I was taking it in stride, like, okay, this is supposed to be somewhat funny, but the amount of dudes that was hitting on him, it was just weird. And I feel bad for the voice actor having to kind of play this role to a certain degree, because he's like, you can hear it vocally that he's slightly hypening the pitch up so that he sounds a little bit more feminine. And I was like, bro, I give you props because you're playing a role that I'm sure you're not really into right now. So that was another part of the episode where I was just kind of like, I was trying to laugh it off at first, but the amount of dudes that was just like pushing up on Kirito, it just felt a little awkward after a certain point. I did like that Sinon is opening up to him, and we get to see Sinon kind of being happy. So there's definitely a little bit of foreshadowing that Kirito is kind of going to be like a Superman Terry. He's going to be the one that is definitely going to save her. So this is already, we're seeing early inklings of it way too fast, in my opinion, because he literally met her within as soon as him opening into the game, you know, getting into the game. And then also her opening up to him felt a little bit rushed. But to be fair, she does think that he's a female, and I guess she kind of thinks like, oh, you know, this is one of the few females I've ever seen in this game, so she's getting a little bit more camaraderie via that way. But still, it feels overall very quick. And I'm not gonna lie, halfway through the episode when he was doing that little cowboy thing, which, by the way, that felt like Kenny from Attack on Titan, just saying, no spoilers. But when he was kind of like rushing into there and he did that thing very quick, I was like, there we go, Kirito back into his Yugimoto syndrome, destroying everything. And at first I was going to say this episode was bad. But midway through, it started after that point on fixing itself up a little bit. When he went to the gun range and he tried to use the gun techniques and, you know, do gun things, he was pretty much shit at it. So that's a good sign that he's not going to immediately come in and beast at everything. There are limits to what he can do. And I guess him being at that range and being able to do certain things as far as like, you know, the cowboy stuff, you know, rushing into it, those are like remnants of his abilities that he had in Alfheim and in SAO. So that's his skills as an MMO player shining through. Sometimes it feels a little bit too much, like, is like, how are you just coming in and beasting at, you know, immediately? But at least certain aspects of this game, he can't do that. So I'm glad that they kept it somewhat grounded and then just let Kirito go wild and become the expert within 10 seconds. And at first I was thinking it's very stupid of him to try to get a sword. He's like, you're bringing a sword to a gunfight. What are you doing? But it makes sense for him because since he is still good with the sword from all of his remnants of abilities, then yeah, he could go in with that. Because if he goes in with a gun and he beats his people and starts fucking shit up, it's gonna be straight up bullshit. Straight up fucking horse shit. Because especially we're seeing he was a shit shot in this, you know, episode. We saw when he tried to shoot the gun, he was garbage. So him keeping it, it's a risky situation, but with his maneuvering around and his ability to use the sword and stuff like that, it's good. So it works, you know, somewhat. Art and animation, it's SAO. Don't need to say much more. It looked gorgeous, beautiful. It was just an eye orgasm to look at. It just looked really good, the art and animation. Like the movement, the scenes, it was just like, yeah, they did a good job with the art and animation. Don't need to go into that. And then I felt if they were going to go so quick with this material, why cut off at the end where they're like on the bicycle, and at the same time him being on the bike, he's like, yeah, I rode a bike before. It just kind of felt like they were adopting certain things from SAO1 in this episode, and I really hope that's not the case for the future of the anime, because the first 3 episodes, we didn't really have any of that. This week's episode, it felt like the pacing was going back to that very quick, and Kirito kind of fucking shit up already. It was still grounding him, so I wasn't completely like, oh, fuck this shit. They still grounded him when it came to the gun range, but nonetheless, I was still like, oh man, things is going so quick. He already met Sinon. They're already in an adventure. Sinon is already opening up to him. But there were still elements where it's like, it sort of makes sense. So I wasn't completely like, I didn't completely hate this episode, and this wasn't a bad episode, but I felt they could have slowed things down a little bit more. I felt maybe this episode he could have found Sinon after practicing somewhere around there, and then when he meets Sinon, slowly they form a friendship, or the episode could have ended with him saying, I'm Kirito, or, whatever his name is in the game, which, by the way, I'd imagine she's going to get real pissed when she finds out that he's a dude and not a chick. So all things considered, I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. It was really hard for me to decide what I wanted to give it, because I didn't feel it was a bad episode, but it did have quite a few different problems with it, where I was like, it's going too fast, they got introduced too quick, Kirito's already beasting in a lot of different things, so 6.5 for this one. Art and animation gorgeous, but it definitely was starting to show some problems from SAO1, and I really hope we don't go down that route again. I hope, like, in the next episode, Kirito doesn't just, like, win most of BOB. Like, he shouldn't go into BOB and just absolutely dominate. If when he goes into the tournament, yeah, maybe he'll win a couple matches or whatever, but if he absolutely dominates and just starts destroying people left and right, that's going to kind of come across as BS, especially he's in an unfamiliar game and he's barely had any practice at all. So he shouldn't go in there and absolutely dominate. But yeah, fine episode. Hopefully a lot of these problems don't stay around, this fast pacing and, things of that nature, because if not, it's like, I don't want to feel the same way I felt like for SAO1 with SAO2, especially considering some of the characters seem more interesting, and overall it seems like it could do a lot better. Let me know what you thought of the episode. First of all, do you feel it was going a little bit too fast? Do you feel like it was entering that SAO1 mode again? Also, were you turned off a little bit with the whole thing of Kirito being like hit on by every dude in the game? And just overall thoughts of the episode. But that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, you can do so as well. That'd be awesome. I'm from Neverworld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. So I'm very mixed with this week's episode of SAO2. There was some good parts to it, and then there was some parts where I felt like SAO2 was kind of relapsing into some certain bad habits that SAO1 had. For starters, this episode, I definitely felt like the pacing on a certain level was going back to some of the stuff that we would get in SAO1. I mean, from the moment he went into the game, he quickly already met up with Sinon. I mean, I'm sure this game is humongous, so for him to run into Sinon already, it felt like they just kind of breezed to that point very quickly. But then there were certain aspects as well where I felt like it was just kind of going super quick, so the pacing in this episode definitely was looking like a lot of that SAO1 stuff, and if you know from SAO1, the pacing was way too fast. So in that regard, I was just looking at it like, please don't tell me we're going back into that SAO1 pacing where Kirito becomes a master of the game in no time at all. And then not to mention something that I kind of already knew